2015. So what we're doing with with TacEval 2015 is we're actually going to evaluate the way we run MageCom operations. So what we've looked at is how we can do that, how we can set it up. We're talking about looking at everything from the forum postings to the coordination to actually flying. As such, there won't be a big, massive write-up. A write-up will appear next week that will set the scene. Basic area we're going to be using is the Atlantic off the coast of Florida down into the Caribbean, just because it's nice and close. Primary fixed-wing land base will be Homestead Air Force Base. Primary base for us in the Navy will be the TacPac multi-ship carrier that Ed developed. Basically, as I've said, the flights will start with navigation, communication, coordination, moving into how we actually employ tactics for each sort of objective. So basically, like if you look into Flight 2, which is Search, Combat Air Patrol, Aerial Denial, what you'll actually be getting is you'll be getting an objective in week 2, and it'll be control this area of airspace. And what it'll be up to people to do, and if no one else does it, I'll jump on it and do it, is it'll be up to people to figure out how they would best do that. You know, what's the best way to provide coverage in this area for 2.5 hours? How are we going to do it? So that's sort of the whole point. And as we move on and around there, the other thing we'll be using the Pine Castle bombing range again for the strike stuff. Other than that, there's nothing really new. There's still Thursday night flights. There's still thing, but what we're really looking for, you know, hopefully if we get any members, is participation out of sort of the lower echelon members in the posting flights and whatnot. Because I mean, everyone pretty much in this room can do flight postings and MageCom running. We're looking for other people to be able to do it. That's what me and Bill were trying to figure out this way around. That's what we were trying to do. So that's pretty much it. It was just sort of everyone in the room that's here doesn't need to be here, unfortunately, but that's fine. I'm really looking for performance from the junior members, just sort of stepping up and starting to post this stuff. What I'll probably do is each week I'll start a different forum topic, because what I'd like to see people doing throughout that week is going through the forums, discussing tactics, how they want to do it, putting together a plan together, just seeing how that's going. At least that's what I'm intending to do. It might be a bit optimistic with the lack of members, but it's something different and it's new. And if all else fails and, you know, we're staring down the barrel of a Thursday night flight and nothing's happened come frickin', you know, Wednesday my time, which is Tuesday American time, I'll just go post something. So that's pretty much what we're doing.
Good deal. I just didn't want to hear that it would digress into what happened last year, which was the aggressor squadron wanting to come out and beat up on the rookies every week, and that really got under my skin last year.
Well, I mean, this is the thing with the development. That's a good point. With the development, I mean, we will control the aggressor stuff. I mean, I do have some ideas for their aggressors, but it won't be overtly aggressive, because I mean, an aggressor can be anything. You know, like the biggest thing I think, you know, when I look at the Atlantic and I look at just the countries involved in that bottom corner of the world, a tactical threat to an exercise in that area of the world doesn't necessarily represent MiG-21s coming out of Cuba. I mean, that's what everyone likes to think, because that's what everyone likes to shoot at. But, you know, you've got a whole bunch of nations there that all claim sovereignty, you know, and it's very similar to an operation we've got in the works. You know, even just commercial air traffic could be conflicting on an exercise. And that's something you've got to deal with, you know, and that's especially true, you know, when you start looking at, you know, combat air patrols over a carrier group. It's not necessarily about, you know, keeping the Russian Bear bombers from coming over the horizon and ruining your day. It's about not having a passenger jet full of 350 people screaming over the top of an aircraft carrier group, an automatic Aegis missile cruiser freaking shooting the shit out of it. I mean, we've had that happen before, and that's kind of dumb. So so I mean, there's different things you can do with the aggressors, and that's something that I think people will know more as we get more members, assuming we ever get more members. But that's a story for another time. Because the aggressors can be anything. They can be drug runners, they can be pilots with our radios, they can be anything. They don't have to be Su-37s coming out of nowhere to kill you.
Well, and I think the other thing is, what I hope to be able to get from this is some information. So just like Ben said, we can look in the future and say, right, okay, we got this down really good, but we really need to work on this, and to kind of help us plan what kind of flights and missions we want to do and going into the future to help, add some realism and be able to work on these things that we think we can do better on.
Well, that's exactly it. It's an evaluation of what we're good at. And the problem with it, of course, and it's one of the reasons why you'd want to run it every year, is different skills atrophy. I mean, Alex made the comment last night that, I think we've done enough. I think we've got low-level training down pat. And that's okay. Yeah, cool. 3 out of the last 6 Thursday night flights have been low-level orientated. Cool. I'll give him that. We're probably good at it by now. 4, because you got Bill's one as well. You got Jerry's one as well. Fine. Totally get that. But if we left that skill for 6 months and went back to it, we'd be nowhere near as good. So there's that sort of thing as well. And it will be kind of interesting to look at the stuff we haven't practiced in a long time. I mean, I got a hideous surprise when I went out to the Pine Castle bombing range and hit 1 out of the 4 things I pointed my laser designator at. So, that's kind of interesting. So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. And I kind of want it to be an extended learning experience. So it's not competitive. There's no points. When we do the competitive stuff, it's actually the Top Gun Red Flag. So that's been my biggest challenge, is trying to make it different from Top Gun Red Flag,
My point exactly. Yeah, I want to keep the competition out of it this year. It became a really, really big pain in the ass last year. And I just basically pulled us out of it because of it.
I did like it, and that was fine. And if it's run fine, that's cool. I liked the idea of working towards beating someone. That was cool, especially to have them as people. And I think that's why CVW-8, we worked well there as well, because we got to drill and all that. I liked that whole process, but it wasn't done well enough, and it's only going to get easier as more and more people come up with TacPack aircraft.
So, just so everybody knows, worked on some documentation and came up with an evaluation form, and it's got 50 different tasks listed on it. And those 50 tasks can be anywhere from tactical mission planning and briefing to a COD or VERTEP operation. And it kind of runs a whole gambit of stuff. Some of it's geared towards the NAC, some of it's air combat, some of it's search and rescue with maybe the Coast Guard or Army Aviation. So we came up with this form not just for our commands, but for the whole USVAF. And some of them are going to be, for example, one of the things I thought, like aerial denial and combat search operation going. So you got 2 parts to that operation going. You got an aerial denial. We want to keep any hostile aircraft out of that area so our combat and search rescue team can go in there and try to find somebody. And so you may have concurrent operations running at the same time, which is what would happen in real life.
Well, that's exactly it, and that's what it's about. It's not about can you get the job done, because there's some of the jobs you're not going to be able to do. It's how can you contribute to the mission. But yeah, so I mean, that's pretty much it. So just as a quick recap, because we've had 866 jump back on. So TacEval, the first flight and briefing will be up this week. The area of operations will be, with the exception of the Pine Castle bombing range, we move into the strike phase. will be the Atlantic extending out as far as 160 miles off of Nassau and down to Providence Island, so it's the Atlantic Caribbean. Flights will be run per se in the sense that I'll post them the week before and we'll have a week to talk about them, figure out the best tactics, and then move on into the next week. What I was trying to get, Kyle, is instead of this time round, because we're there to actually evaluate tactics, so what we're going to do this time round, instead of before we put up a campaign having a big scenario of 5 flights that are going to all tie into each other, what we're going to do this time round is we're going to set an objective, and it'll be on forum. Everyone will be contributing to make the flight that we then plan. So, flight 1 will be it's navigation, communication, and coordination. So flight 1's going to be Air Force leaving from Airport A, Navy leaving from Carrier Group B. I'm sure the Coast Guard can be either one of them, and you can decide, they're either coming from the Air Force as a land base, or we can stick a cutter out there for you, etc. Got a rendezvous at point C at altitude and at time, coming from 2 different directions. So that's going to be like a nav exercise and a coordination exercise. Flight 2 is going to be about taking and controlling an airspace for a set period of time and deciding what we're going to do and how we're going to do that. And it just moves down and down through there. So that's pretty much what we're going. If that in a nutshell gives you an understanding of what we're doing, does that make sense to you, Kyle?
Oh yeah, it does. And sorry I jumped on late. I'm in the process of moving everything.
Practice run to the aerial navigation and coordination flight. I flew part of the Air Force, then flew part of the Navy. And granted, we're old hands. We've been doing this quite a while. It wasn't that difficult.
It wasn't all that easy, though.
No, but it takes a lot of communication. That's the key.
Well, also what I want to see there, because it's a personal peeve of mine, but then I learned navigation with a chart, a stopwatch, and a compass. Is it takes because the machine's giving you a whole bunch of cool information. Pretty much everything we fly nowadays has got full flight management computers, has got frickin' whiz-bang GPSs that'll give you ETAs and fuel burns and all these wonderful, marvelous things that I can't even explain or spell. And but what it doesn't make you do is it doesn't make you interpret that information and use it to actively build a picture in your mind. So when you do something as simple as, all it is the old math problem from high school. Train A leaves station A and heads to station B. Train B leaves station B and heads to station A. Where will they meet? That's all it is. It's not rocket science. But to actually get you in that frame of mind and actually building that physical picture, like I knew exactly where you were, and even more so when I had you on radar, and that actually became an actual equation in what I was doing, because I either had to speed up or slow down.
The thing that adds to the complexity of the mathematics is you're flying 2 different types of aircraft with different capabilities, different speed ranges, different optimum altitude and cruising speed,
Well, that's exactly it. Do you launch the fighters first because they're high and fast? Do you have them get up to their optimum cruising altitude and loiter overhead, and take a slow route there and then drop down to join up? Do you launch the slower stuff first, leaving them exposed? This is all of the sort of stuff that I want people to be talking about leading up to Thursday, to the flight. Just to get people, in that mindset of this is what we're going to be doing. So yeah, the first flight will drop. Like I said, I'll get the write-up done this week. So the first actual TacEval flight will not be this coming Thursday, but it'll be the next one. So it'll be the first Thursday in November. if that makes sense. That way people have got a good long week to talk about it. Like, it'd be great if we could get, a Hercules isn't by any means slow, but it's not no F-15 or F-18. It'd be kind of interesting to see how we do that, how we'd get a Hercules and two different strike aircraft overhead and formed up in the same time. That'd be a big challenge, I think. Maybe launching the Hercules early is the right idea, but then that being said, there's other ways around that, and there's safer ways around that, because just twiddling your thumbs, waiting the half an hour for the Herc to get a big enough head start, there's other ways to do it. Maybe the Herc can get up to altitude quicker, and we can beat him to altitude. There's all sorts of things. The other thing too is if you're running at different altitudes, you're running at different ground speeds. So you could have the Herc sort of relatively high and us relatively low, as long as we've got the fuel to do it. All that sort of stuff affects your ETA, which is kind of interesting.
When you're running escort on something as slow as, say, a Hercules or a C-141, the way it's done, Ben, is you're actually flying in orbit around the slower moving aircraft, which means that you've got to have multiple fighters, because they're consuming a lot of fuel because they're covering a lot more territory, and it's done in shifts. This pair will orbit while this pair flies off to catch the tanker, and then they come back and they swap up.
Right, and that's exactly the planning that we want to see happen. The Air Force guys, we know what the capability of our aircraft is. The Coast Guard knows what the capability of their aircraft is. The NAC knows the capability of their aircraft. And we want, it's like I told my wing commanders, what I'm looking for them to do is to come together and say, okay, here's my assets. Here's what we want to deploy. Here's our capability, and have that communication, that dialogue going between MAGCOMs to try to coordinate all this. How do we get all those assets in the same area at the same time in a safe and secured way?
Pretty much. So, Flight 1, just because I've got pretty much all the head sheds here, Flight 1, won't get into specifics, but Flight 1 will have at least two different start points. So there'll be a start point for the Navy, a start point for the Air Force. I'm not too sure where the Coast Guard's going to come down on this, and for the purposes of the exercise, it doesn't matter. I think both of us would be happy to have you. So either the Coast Guard will launch from the land, or will launch from the sea, depending on what they want to bring and what they want to provide, and will then fly to a rendezvous point. Then as a unit, we will leave that rendezvous point, fly to another point, then return to base. So it's a really simple navigation exercise. But the little kicker is these different aircraft need to arrive at the same point in space at the same time, coming from different places and different distances, and then move to another place before returning home. I don't really mind what time you return home. Doesn't bother me none. But that's basically number one. And so that's just sort of an example. And it's also an example of how it's going to run, because that's pretty much all the write-up you'd get. This is the point you're leaving. This is the point you're leaving from. This is the point you've got to be. This is the point you've got to get to. That's pretty much what you'll be getting. I'll pretty it up and make it sound all nerd-like, but that's pretty much what you're getting, and the rest you guys then fill in, because what we're looking for is how well we can perform as multiple MAGCOMs, and it's just a lot easier to do that this way than it is pretend to bomb Syria.
Roger, and it's probably going to fall to me to do it for Carrier Air Wing 3, because as of right now, we have 0 active members in Carrier Air Wing 3.
You got Nevesh. He's in the Marines, but remember, you got Nevesh for a couple of weeks before he goes back to exams.
1 week.
Oh, so you'll be in exams while we're doing this. Okay, well, all right, yeah, it'll be you, Ed. It'll be you.
No, wait, I'll be in exams for 2 weeks, and then I'll be able to join you guys for the finishing up of TacEval.
Well, and that goes back to the in real life, what assets are available. We may plan to use strikes off a carrier, and then come to find out we can't get those assets for whatever reason. That's the whole idea is, how do we how do we adjust to those changes and make those changes to still try to accomplish the mission? Because in this scenario, that's the whole purpose. Is it's the unexpected things that happen. Well, we're going out with this mission, and then come to find out, well, we don't have those assets available. So now, we only have one F-18 trying to cover the whole area, and everybody else is running something, subsonic or slower. How do we incorporate all that?
That's exactly it, and that brings up a really good point, and I don't want to give too much away, but be ready for the unexpected, and by unexpected, I don't just mean the aggressors are going to fall out of the sun and shoot the crap out of you, because they're actually not. We'll have some air combat maneuvering in Flight 3, but as far as aggressors go, it will be minimal. So don't worry too much about it, but there are some other things I have up my sleeve to sort of throw spanners in the works to see how that works, because that's always fun. When everything's going right, we'll start turning things off and getting people lost and all that jazz.
Hell, I can get lost between here and the pisser, and that's 15 feet.
Yeah, that's that whole senile dementia thing. They got pills for that, Ed. It's all good. Just take the pills, man. Either that or drink more. Those are your two options there.
That's what gets me lost.
Yeah, this is very true. Alright guys, I am going to head off to bed. Like I said, my next day's off. I'm halfway through my 4 blocks, so Monday I'm off. So by next week, they should be posted, and then TacEval's running. So by the looks of my handy dandy calendar here, first TacEval flight will be 5 November.
Alright, so we're going to have to put one up, put something together for this Thursday. Any suggestions, gentlemen?
Alright, anyways. Yeah, it's just not so drama. I mean, just anything really.
No, I want it to be something functional that we can use. I'm kind of thinking about some dead reckoning navigation. We haven't done that in eons.
Yeah, good bait. Actually, in fact, I know exactly what you can do. Google, Flight 16 or something.
Maybe flight that got lost out over the Caribbean?
Yeah, Google that, because you can actually find their flight plan. Go fly that in a T6, and you will see how you get lost. You will make your turn, and you will genuinely believe that the arse end of the Bahamian chain is the Florida Keys. Genuinely do that. It is a very, very interesting thing.
Look up that flight number and send it to me, Ben, and we will do that Thursday night.
It's just on Wikipedia. It'll take me 2 seconds.
Is it Polish Airlines Flight 16?
No, it was a Navy flight that got lost in 1946, 47.
You talking about Flight 19?
19, there it is.
Flight 19. We will recreate that Thursday night. That'd be a good one.
There you go, there it is. And if you scroll down, into it, there's a nice little picture of where you've got to fly to. It's a 4 waypoint dead reckoning thing. It's not the end of the world. It's actually a really well written article. No clue who wrote it, but it's nicely written. Because sometimes Wikipedia, especially when you start talking about lost aircraft, gets a little tinfoil hat.
Right. So I recorded this because some of my members weren't going to be able to make it. I'm going to post a link for people to download the MP3 to listen to it.
Cool.
That's all I have, unless there's any other questions.
Well, I have one real quick. Is this going to be the TacEval is going to be on FS Host or on Direct Connect?
Personally, I prefer Direct Connect just because of the smoothness of it, but it's not my call. I think we should go in whatever direction we can get the most people, and lately that seems not to be FS Host.
The upshot being, though, I mean, if you're not landing on the aircraft carriers, there's absolutely no reason why we can't be in Direct Connect flying on and off the carrier and smack FS host on. I mean, I don't even notice the frame rate difference, me personally. So I mean, there's definitely workarounds there. It just means they won't see our aircraft carrier. But if they're not going to it, it's not a big issue. If you know.
Yeah,
What I mean.
I actually still have some pilots flying FS9, so just for the benefit of my command, I would vote trying to use FS host unless we were doing very specific type of missions where we need to use direct connect.
That's cool.
The problem we're running into, Bill, people are not forwarding their ports. Run into it every time we have something on host.
Anyways, I'm gonna leave you guys to it. I'm going to bed.
Yeah, here's my thinking on that is during the TacEval, if you connect and your ports aren't open and we're able to trace it back to you, you're going to be asked to leave the session. That there's no reason why none of our pilots should be able to make sure their ports are open. And I think that's something that needs to be enforced because it affects everybody else. And if they don't know how to do it, then that's something they need to learn how to do. Because, I mean, that's the main way a lot of people can connect.
Yeah,
I was
I
just
put up in a forum post a while back. If you're gonna fly flight sim online, you at least need to learn the basics about how to work your machine.
I mean, that's my feeling is if you connect and you don't have your ports open and other people can't connect, I if I'm flying, I'm going to ask you to leave the session and come back at another time. Go fly it when other people aren't online or something like that, because it's not fair to those who are wanting to participate if the person, for whatever reason, was unable to verify their ports open. Now, if you change your IP address or something like that, it happens to me sometimes. If my router resets, and then I'm able to fix that on the fly pretty quickly. But it's about respecting other people, and there's plenty of tools out there. I use Program Port Checker. It works fantastic. It tells me exactly what my IP address, and it tells me exactly if my ports are open or not. And I know in a matter of about 40 seconds if my ports aren't open. And there's no reason why any of our pilots shouldn't be able to do that. And if they need help, that's fine. We'll help them. But don't come at the time that we're getting ready to do the TacEval mission and say, oh, now my ports aren't open. That's the pilot's responsibility. If they need help or if they're not sure, to either seek help or at least at a minimum test it before TacEval operation starts for that Thursday to make sure everything's working. And that's my opinion.
Well, last night it was me that was following some things up, and it was a purely stupid oversight on my part. When I changed over to the new computer, I didn't go in and change the settings in the router. It was still looking for Edge PC instead of Edge. That's the name of this computer. My router goes by name, not IP address.
Yeah. So that's my thinking about it. I mean, like I said, because I do have pilots that are still flying FS9, and I want to at least let them have that opportunity to participate if they wanted to. I don't want that to be a barrier if we can help it. I mean, if everybody that is there for TacEval is say, well, we all want to do direct connect, then that's fine. But I just, like I said, I don't want to select it down to, well, if you don't have FSX, you're not going to be able to participate.
Understood. Yeah, see, on the Navy end, we're going to have to use Direct Connect because we're going to be using TAC to spawn the carrier, and otherwise, without Direct Connect, you can't sync up.
Right. I understand that. So, but that was a great question. I hope we answered that for you, Kyle.
Oh yeah, I was just curious because I know myself, I'm running the Steam edition, so that limits me a lot with connecting to other people.
And it's like I know I can run both Direct Connect and FS Host at the same time and have minimal impact. Usually I don't even know it's running. I forget. I connect to one. I forget I left the other one on. So, it's one of those things. Hopefully we can work around. And these are the things that we would need to know. That's part of the purpose of the TacEval is not just actually getting out there, doing the flight, doing the mission, but the logistics involved and, the planning. And like I said, what we really want to see is the dialogue. We really want to see the interaction between the MAGECOMs. And like I said, the sheet that I came up with, it's an evaluation sheet with a score from 1 to 5. And basically, Ben and I are going to be looking particularly at our commands and seeing how well we do these different 50 tasks. And we may not do all 50 of them. In this particular mission, we may only be doing 2 out of the 50. And we'll be able to come up with an overall score and say, yeah, that's not a very good score. That's something we need to look at doing missions in the future, say, going into next year, plan missions to help do these kinds of things. For example, just to give you an example of some of the tasks, task number 32 is separation. So very, very simple, but very important. Maintaining aircraft separation so that, we're not crashing into each other and we're not getting elopement into airspace, things like that. Another one is visual lookout. Looking out of the aircraft while you're flying and identifying visual targets out as you go out, completing the mission, and then coming back into the aircraft. I think somebody said it last night when we were flying. Some people can get that tunnel vision. They get so looked at the instrumentation, they're not looking out what's going on outside of the aircraft. And there's a technique involved with that. And each one of these tasks, by the way, this whole sheet will be published for people to download it. And there is a paragraph explaining what that task is. Another one is Task 40, Combat Search and Rescue, and it's going to tell you a little bit about, for Task 40, Combat Search and Rescue, is tactics used in or around combat zone to search for and provision of aid to people who are in distress or immediate danger. So those are the scenario that we would look at. What kind of tactics would you use to do a combat search and rescue mission? What would be required? What would they, how would you accomplish that? What aircraft, what assets it would take to do that? And how does everybody fit into that whole picture? Another one, for example, is strategic airlift of supplies. The definition of strategic is anything 500 nautical miles or greater, where tactical is 500 nautical miles or less. Those things, like I said, it's how well can we do it? And this is going to help us also as a group to see where our strengths are as a whole USVAF. So we can go to headquarters and say, okay, these are the things we do very well. These are the things we really need to work on. And here's some ideas on how we can do it and still have fun and enjoy ourselves.
Well, I tell you, for this evolution build, the Navy is going to be the weak sister. I have 0 assets beside myself that I can count on in Carrier Wing 3. Second law consists of NEVASH, and that's it.
Well, and if that's the case, then I would, obviously I wouldn't mind coming back and doing some missions if I need to fill in. Because one of the things that I'm really looking for this TacEval, I'm really looking for my wing commanders. I've already warned them and Alex that I'm going to be looking for them to help really plan some of this stuff and bring it together, because that's part of their evaluation on, as leaders, can they pull this stuff together? How do you make it work?
Yeah, we're just in a slump right now. We got no people, no participation really, and there's nothing I can do. So we got people on paper, but that's it. It's a paper command.
What about the Training Wing 6 pilots? Won't they be able to make it?
I have one Training Wing 6 pilot who has done anything in the last 2 months. As I said, Nevash, it's a paper command. They're there on paper only.
Well, hopefully, we get this going. That'll, kick some fires under some people, and they'll want to get out and participate. But, ultimately, it's about having fun and enjoying ourselves. Like I said, Ben and I have spent a lot of time going back and forth trying to come up with something that we think will be useful and yet still have a lot of fun doing. There's a whole introduction here on what a TacEval is and why it exists. And it is a tool that modern military uses to help, figure out how they want to do stuff and what areas they do well and what areas they don't do well and what areas they can improve upon. All right, if there's nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. And thank everybody for coming out and listening and participating. Like I said, I'll have this posted. And if you do have questions after you listen to this, please either bring it to your CO or your vice commander or your commander if they're not available. So thank you guys for participating, and looking forward to TacEval 2015.
Roger that. I'm out.
Copy that, sir.